Dispatching all biters. My quest to free the country of zombies. Mystic Alchemist. Copyright 2020 Mystic Alchemist. All rights reserved. Written in Australian English. This book is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places and incidents are either a product of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual people living or dead, events or locales is purely coincidental. Chapter 4. Shopping. When I set off driving again, my mission was to find an old-style GPS navigator. One of those that had a suction cap holding it to the windscreen. One that had no signal back to the government. I needed to keep heading west, driving with the side window down to try to hear for any possible traffic and an eye to see what the shooting last night had been for. Hardly a mile and there were two people lying alongside the road. A man and a woman, both carrying bags and both riddled with bullets, most likely from one of the cars last night. Car not working and they decided to walk. There were another couple a little way further. Same situation. The only vehicles I saw moving on the highway were trucks. Unmarked cargo hauling trucks. All pale cream and no insignia, the drivers wearing black uniforms from top to bottom. The slightest suggestion of something on the road had me making for the side and stopping, feigning death. It worked in that no one stopped to check me out and no one shot at my car. When I spied a big-name hardware shop ahead right off the highway, I did turn in, parking close to the entrance alongside other parked cars in the lot. The cars close were all empty and gave me the idea that the building could be full of infected all looking for a way out. Caution needed, so with my fire axe in hand I made for the entrance. Another automatic sliding door and a horde of infected milling around the glass. Maybe it wasn't worth the risk. A sign for deliveries caught my eye. Maybe the back entrance might be better, and it was. A solid access door this time and no sounds from inside when my ear pressed against the steel to check. The door was locked, but a little way further was the wire of a garden center. That was easier. It wasn't that easy in practice, but I did find a way to squeeze inside between some loose wire mesh and a bit of dark green fiberglass sheet. I definitely needed more practice at being a thief. Only a few sections of clear roof to light the huge building, but enough to see what I wanted. My efforts with this entrance added wire cutters to my list of things to search for. My first infected was wandering in the tool aisle, hissing when he noticed me approach, his arms out ready to grab me in a bear hug and bite my open neck. One mighty swipe with that axe and that drooling shop assistant had a head that was flat from ear to ear. Quick and relatively silent, but not silent enough. Now two more were approaching and I sprinted to them and dispatched them the same way. That gave me time to look for tools and I selected the most expensive set of wire choppers they had. Near was a bigger bolt cutter tool. Heavier but it could be handy. There were pry bars in a bay near so I appropriated one of them too. Too much to keep carrying, a sprint to the hole I'd opened in the garden center had the treasures thrown outside. Now the flashlights that were my real target. The electrical section was much further along, and my intrusion had been noticed with infected in the far end of most aisles making their way toward the rear. I'd need to be fast. Grab and run back toward my entrance was my plan, but I wasn't fast enough. One infected had beat me. My slash was not good, only getting an arm and that seemed to make him even more angry. His moans and spitting and hissing getting louder and acting as a focus for more. Another attempted slash managed to chop him half through his stomach, but it didn't slow him and the moaning was growing behind me. Run! I said to myself. Leave him. I did. Running for the gap in the garden center and throwing the axe through ahead of me. Then it was the flashlights and then me. Bent over outside while I tried to get my breath while I watched that one-armed moaner amble closer, his gait a little unsteady with the large hole in his tummy. I waited until he was trying to go through the gap I'd used before, then I picked up the new pry bar and stabbed at his forehead, pushing it right in hard. Now his body was blocking the gap and that should keep the rest of them inside while I made my escape. Sitting in the car waiting for my lungs to stop heaving and my legs stop shaking, this much excitement can't be good for my heart. Then there were vehicles passing on the highway. 6 semi-trailers, one after another, all heading the way I'd come from and all the same plain color and no marking visible. In one way I was relieved to be parked here while they moved, it was good cover. I stayed longer, walking around all the cars parked looking through the windscreens for a GPS navigation unit. Nothing. Where had they all gone? Did everyone rely on the government for everything? The touring atlas gave me the next town. In fact, it gave the one highway to get most of the way there, but after seeing so many of those trucks I was thinking it might be best to stay low and take some back roads. A GPS would sure be handy with that, maybe an auto parts shop would have one. I didn't even need to start the car, one was opposite the road in front. Easier to walk. Absolutely no traffic as I walked the lot then crossed the highway. The auto place was much like the hardware, a group of infected trapped inside the door, so time for the back entrance again. This place had much better security. The back entrance had a locked wire chain gate and then beyond this was a roller door, shut of course. Along the side, near the back was a staff entrance, a single metal covered door with no knob, just a keyway alongside an intercom button. What if I busted through that door with my axe and attacked the infested as they came through the restricted doorway? It was a plan. Not one of my best, but using the pointy side of the fire axe, and swinging as hard as I could, aiming right at the keyway, the door opened with one go, but the noise was loud enough to raise the dead. Changing my idea of waiting outside, I sprinted through the doorway, trying to see in the gloom after the bright of outside. No infected close. But where were the navigators? The car audio section was along the back wall and there, amongst the huge ghetto blaster speakers and amplifiers and reversing cameras was navigators. 2 types, so I took one of each. Still no moaning, but that changed as I made my escape. 6 of them trying to get through the doorway together and moaning and hissing. It was then I had a bright idea. While they were there, I'll use the front door to get out. Simple. It was 2. 1 smash with the point of my fire axe and one of the small glass panes was smashed and I was through it just in time to see the infected that had used the side door come to see what all the noise was about. All 6 of them all still together and making for me. Run. That was the best and that's what I started to do until I saw the road ahead. Another one of those unmarked trucks approaching and how many more behind them. In that split second, I decided to get back inside that auto shop and hide out there. I would deal with the infected as they tried to get to me. Back just through the broken glass, axe ready, waiting for the infected as I saw one truck pass. The first zombie poked his head through the glass and it was easy to slice the end off, his body slumping and partly blocking the way for the others. There was now enough space for another head to try to get through, but that didn't last long. 4 more to go, but they stopped trying through this opening and began ambling toward the opened side door. Only 4 now. I could handle that. Standing along the doorway, I chopped down through the head of the first infected as he entered, his head parting and brains mush spilling everywhere. Those behind pressed him forward and I managed to get my axe up to hit at the next, but my aim wasn't as good, merely wounding his shoulder and making him hiss in a very annoyed manner. I reached for the screwdriver in my belt and stabbed him hard in the ear. That stopped his hissing, but my screwdriver was stuck in his skull and I had to leave it there as the other 2 were getting impatient to bite me. I ran away. I'd left the navigators and axe by the doorway and needed a weapon. That should be easy to find in a shop like this with heavy tools everywhere. The 2 infected were advancing one behind the other when I found a wrench of some sort. All I knew was it was long and heavy and when I hit at the head of the first infected he went down quickly. 1 left, a woman. Still holding the wrench I swung at her but she caught the poorly aimed wrench with her arms and held it. I let it go and backed away, looking left and right for something better. It was some sort of jack thing that was convenient. Bright red and heavy. I hefted it up and tried to throw it at her head. At least it hit her left leg and it did slow her a little. I grabbed another one and aimed higher. Her stomach this time, but she was slowing. Then I saw it. Alongside was a wheeled shopping cart, one like every supermarket used. I took hold of the handle and speared the cart toward her, seeing her bending over the basket, her top and head down like a parcel of groceries and me free to wheel the moaning hissing cart toward the wall as fast as I could. It didn't splat at all, but she still had her head down in the basket, leaving me to grab everything I could find to pile on top of her. She was still hissing, but she wasn't getting out of there in a hurry. Retrieving my navigators and axe where I'd left them near the doorway, I peeked outside checking everything was still good and there was nothing else around to worry me. An uneventful sprint back over the highway without seeing any more traffic, but still cautious when I got close to where my car was, but it was still there and safe. It took some time to unpack one of the GPS units and settle my nerves once again before setting up the navigator on the windscreen. When it did come to life, I worked out how to enter my destination, the real one this time, and waited while it did its thing. At least now whatever road I took, I would have a bearing back to the one place I was aiming for.